Am I the a-hole for being upset that my husband of 18 years left me alone at the hospital when I was bleeding internally? So I, 42F, have been married to my husband, 44M, for 18 years. We've had our ups and downs like any long marriage, but I always thought that when it came to the big things, we had each other's backs. Recently, I had a health scare that honestly shook me to my core, and I can't get over the way my husband handled it. About a month ago, I started having severe abdominal pain. It escalated to the point where I was sweating, lightheaded, and could barely stand. My husband drove me to the ER, and after several hours of tests, the doctors discovered I was bleeding internally. They told me it was serious and that they needed to monitor me closely, possibly prepping me for emergency surgery if things worsened. I was scared out of my mind. Lying in that hospital bed with tubes in me, the beeping machines, the nurses coming in and out, it was overwhelming. I held my husband's hand and asked him to stay with me, but after a couple of hours, he said he was tired, the chairs were uncomfortable, and that he needed rest so he could function if something happened. He kissed my forehead and went home. I tried to rationalize it at the time because yes, he works full-time, and he did drive me there. But when the doctors came back and said my blood pressure was dropping and I might need immediate surgery, I realized I was alone. I was terrified. I texted him, and he didn't respond right away because he was sleeping. Eventually he texted back with something like, "You're in good hands, they'll take care of you." Thankfully, they were able to stabilize me without surgery, and I ended up being discharged after a few days. But the image of being alone during one of the scariest nights of my life hasn't left me. I keep replaying it. My husband says he didn't abandon me, that he just trusted the doctors to do their job and knew I was safe, and that me holding it against him is unfair. But I can't shake the feeling that I would never, ever have left him alone in that situation. I would have slept in the chair, on the floor, in the hallway, whatever it took, just so he didn't feel like he was facing something life-threatening alone. And I don't know if I'm overreacting or if this is a bigger red flag about how he shows up for me when I really need him. So, am I the a-hole for being upset that my husband left me alone in the hospital while I was bleeding internally? When I got home from the hospital, things felt different. Physically, I was still weak and exhausted, but emotionally I was just raw. My husband was kind of walking on eggshells around me, checking in on whether I needed food or meds, but there was this giant unspoken thing sitting between us. About 2 days after I got home, I finally brought it up. I told him, "I can't stop thinking about how you left me that night." I was scared out of my mind, and I felt completely alone. He immediately got defensive. He said, "You weren't alone, you had nurses and doctors there." What was I supposed to do? Sit in an uncomfortable chair all night when I had to be up for work the next day? That floored me. Work? In my head, what mattered was that his wife could have been dying, and the fact that he thought of his comfort and job first made me feel so small. I told him I would never have left him if the roles were reversed, and his response was, "Well, you and I just deal with things differently." The more we talked, or argued, really, the clearer it became that he didn't see it the same way at all. He framed it as being practical, that he trusted the hospital staff, that sitting next to me wasn't going to change anything medically, and that he needed to be rested in case things did take a turn and I needed him to make decisions. But that didn't land with me. I wasn't asking him to perform surgery, I was asking him to sit with me so I didn't feel like I was staring down death alone. That's not about practicality, that's about presence. Since then, I've noticed myself pulling back. When he asks if I'm okay, I just say fine and change the subject. When he tries to cuddle, I don't lean in the same way. It's like a part of me has shut down. I don't know if I'm being unfair or if this is my body's way of saying, "You don't trust him the way you used to." He, on the other hand, seems to think I'm making too much of this. He's told me more than once, "You're alive, you're fine, can we please move on?" But every time he says that, it just makes me angrier, because it feels like he's minimizing one of the scariest experiences of my life. I'm at the point where I don't know if I should let this go and chalk it up to him just being wired differently, or if this is a sign of a much deeper incompatibility in how we show up for each other in crises. The tension didn't just fade, it started seeping into everything. At first, it was small things. I'd catch myself biting back when he made a joke, or I'd roll my eyes when he'd say something dismissive about drama at work. But it grew. It was like this constant reminder that when it counted most, he chose his comfort over me. A couple weeks after I was discharged, I had a follow-up appointment. He didn't even ask if I wanted him to come. I didn't bring it up either, because part of me didn't want to give him another chance to let me down. I just went by myself, but the whole drive there I felt this weight, like I shouldn't have to feel alone in this marriage. The distance between us became obvious. I stopped reaching for his hand when we were out. I didn't feel like telling him about my day. Sex became mechanical, if it happened at all. He noticed, of course, and one night he finally asked, "Why are you shutting me out? You're treating me like I'm the enemy." I told him again. "Because when I needed you most, you weren't there." His response? "You're still hung up on that?" I already explained why I left. "You need to stop punishing me for making a reasonable decision." That broke something in me. I realized we weren't just disagreeing about one night, we had totally different ideas of what marriage means in practice. To me, it's about showing up, even when it's inconvenient. To him, apparently, it's about delegating care to whoever is technically responsible, in this case, the doctors, and calling it good enough. The kicker came a few nights later. I overheard him on the phone with his mom, and he said, "She's still sulking about the hospital. I don't know what else I'm supposed to do, I can't change the past." The word sulking cut me like a knife. That's how he saw my pain? As sulking? After that, I started sleeping in the guest room a few nights a week, using the excuse that I needed better rest. In reality, I just didn't want to lie next to someone I didn't feel I could count on anymore. I keep asking myself, if 18 years in, this is how he shows up when I'm at my most vulnerable, what happens if something worse happens down the line? Am I setting myself up to face the rest of my life's scariest moments alone, even while married? The breaking point came sooner than I expected. About a month after the hospital incident, I had another health scare, thankfully not as serious, but enough to rattle me. I woke up dizzy and nauseous, and given everything that had just happened, my doctor wanted me to come in right away. I asked my husband if he could take me. His reaction? A sigh and, "Do you really need me to? Can't you just drive yourself? I've got a lot on my plate at work today." I just stared at him. 18 years of marriage, a near brush with something life-threatening, and still, his first instinct was to think of himself. I didn't even argue. I just grabbed my bag and left. Sitting in that waiting room alone, I realized the truth I had been avoiding. I already felt alone, even with him in my life. That night, when I came home, I told him flat out, "I don't trust you to be there for me anymore. Not physically, not emotionally. I don't know how we come back from this." For once, he didn't get defensive. He just looked stunned. He asked if I was saying I wanted a divorce, and I told him I honestly didn't know, but that something had to change. Since then, we've been in this weird limbo. He's been overly attentive, suddenly offering to do little things, asking if I want him to come with me to appointments, but it all feels performative, like he's trying to check boxes instead of actually getting why I'm hurt. I told him I wasn't looking for him to just show up now out of guilt, I wanted him to have wanted to be there from the beginning. That's what he doesn't understand. My friends are split. Some say I'm being too hard on him, that not everyone reacts well to medical emergencies and that maybe he was scared and shut down. Others say this is a huge red flag, that if he couldn't even sit in a hospital chair when my life was on the line, he's not someone I can count on for the long haul. And me? I'm still torn. I don't know if I'm being unfair for expecting him to handle things the way I would, or if I'm just finally seeing that we're fundamentally different in how we show up for each other. But the one thing I do know is this, I'll never forget what it felt like to look around that hospital room, realizing he wasn't there, and wondering if I'd have to face dying alone while my husband was at home in bed. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for being this upset? Or is this a sign I should stop making excuses for someone who showed me exactly where I stand on his list of priorities? If this story kept you hooked, give it a like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more.